Good afternoon. I'm hoping what we'll be able to demonstrate as we show you this particular project is this came about because a particular group of stakeholders had a need and a requirement and made that vocal. But we required another set of stakeholders to deliver that. And I think you'll find that by the end of the presentation, the stakeholders that we used and relied on to deliver that actually became some of our best advocates. So hopefully we'll sort of demonstrate that as we go through. So I'm Lorraine Butler. I am in the Smart Motorways Programme. I am the Delivery Director for Operations, Business Improvement, Innovation and Change. So in short, that means I get to do the fantastic things, which is about taking that aspect of work within Highways England that we do, looking at new ways of doing things, moving the agenda forward, and getting to do that challenging stuff. Mal Bell, who will introduce himself in sort of greater detail, I'm sure, when it comes through to it, was the project director for Costain on the M1 scheme, and somebody who I heavily relied on to be able to deliver this trial, and you'll see how we work together on that. But I'll give you a bit of a background as to why we did it, why this came about, and Mal in particular is going to talk about the details of the trial and what they had to do on the ground to achieve it. So those of you that know us know that there are three key imperatives within Highways England. That is safety, customer and delivery, and they are very deliberately in that order. Everything that we do should be about not just the safety of our customer, our road users, our end users, but the safety of those that have to maintain and operate and build the schemes. It's a key imperative. But equally, we deliver everything for our customer. And over the last 2 years, you will have definitely seen the conversation and the agenda move forward in relation to how we need to deliver things differently and how we're moving forward with a greater focus on delivering for our customer. When you consider these in terms of roadworks and the impacts that these have, the issue of roadworks wouldn't surprise you as coming up as a topic, particularly why do we have speed limits when our customers and road users can't see anybody working? And why are they at 50 miles an hour? And why are they still on at night time? And these were questions that were sort of asked. Equally, why do we have speed limits that are the same throughout long stretches? So just to give you a bit of a quick insight into smart motorways, we take the existing assets, so the 3 lanes and the hard shoulder, and we redesign that and reconfigure that so it works differently, so that all 4 lanes in the all-lane running product that we have can now be used to utilise traffic. But we do all of that work within the existing highway. We don't take any additional land. So we have to maintain traffic. We have to maintain a credible asset for the road users while we're doing that work. At the same time, create a working space so that we can put the necessary investment into that asset. And we've made a commitment that we would maintain 3 lanes of traffic open to the public during that time. So you often see longer, thinner stretches of roadworks. However, that said, there's still a challenge for us, and one that we accepted. And equally, when it looks on the surface like it's all done and dusted, and you can still see the cones, why is that? So that was the challenge that we were faced with. And in March of 2016, Jim O'Sullivan, who is our chief executive, challenged us and the supply chain to be more responsive to customers' needs. And it was therefore agreed that we would trial 60 miles an hour through roadworks. Now, we were very particular about the trials, and we created 3 scenarios in which those trial conditions could be looked at, implemented and tested to see if they generated the right results. And what you're going to hear about particularly is scenario 2. And that is that how could we increase the speed limit during the pre-commissioning phase? And I'll tell you a little bit what that is at the moment. You've already heard me talk about we maintain 3 lanes of traffic open for the travelling public, and we do that by utilising narrow lanes. Because we use narrow lanes, that does bring with it a speed restriction. And that speed restriction is for the safety of the public, as well as, primarily for the safety of the public, but as well as the safety of the road worker that's on site. We still want to maintain the commitment to have 3 lanes of traffic open. So what this particular trial looked at was, but at the end, when we've done all our work, when we've sort of laid the blacktop and we're just doing the commissioning phase, when we're making sure that the signs and signals work, when it looks like it's finished, when there aren't road workers there, when we haven't got narrow lanes that the public are travelling on, surely at that point we could look at 60 miles an hour. And what you'll see is that we actually went a little bit better and a little bit further when we started going into this trial. So I'm going to hand over to Mal, who's going to sort of give you the details of that. But hopefully I've set out the context in which we wanted and started to do this trial.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon everyone. As Lorraine said, I'm Malcolm Bell, the project manager for Costain on both the junction 28 to 35A schemes and moving down to the M1 13 to 16 schemes. I'm going to go through the trial itself, and you see we're going to talk about there, go and talk about the programme, how it was achieved, the main issues we had in achieving it, how we did achieve it, and there's a little bit there about the monitoring of actually the results of the trial and a few lessons learned. So the scheme itself was in the northern half of one of the schemes, junction 32 to 35A. When we were approached back in September of 16, the idea was we had to fit it into our current programme. So we weren't able to do a full scheme length of the 60 miles an hour. We had to look at our programme and see where was the best areas we could actually implement the trial and increase it over time to get as much feedback as we possibly could. So we looked at it there, and actually we only were able to do about 8 kilometres. It was about 3.5, I think, from junction 35 to 35A, which is up north past Sheffield, and they've extended it a little bit further south a couple of weeks later. Programme. So back in August we volunteered, in a very loose sense of the word, we volunteered to encouraged to take part in this programme. I'll be honest, one of the first meetings we had a workshop, and I sat down with all of my team, first of all just the Costain and WSP guys, the designers, and said, right, we've been challenged with delivering a 60 miles an hour, and I can't repeat the amount of words which were sent back in my direction. 2 years ago we were looking at reducing it to 40 miles an hour, so for me to go in there and say, right, we've been asked to try and go to 60, wasn't well received. However, a bit of a gentle encouragement again from myself, and actually talking about it, and as Lorraine said, it's very much at the end period when we have got the wider lanes, when the works are generally done. It actually sounded like, yeah, it's a challenge we would take on. What we didn't know at the time was the time challenges we had, which were pretty drastic. So we made a decision, week 2 there, mid-September, we were going to go with this. I don't know if you ever know traffic orders. We're supposed to put a new traffic order in place for this. Normally that takes 12 weeks. We'd completed the whole trial 12 weeks later. So it's a bit of a stretch, and we need a lot of buy-in from everybody to do that. But the programme, we really say week 0, August, all the way through December. So what issues did we have? Safety. Is it safe to go and put a 60 miles an hour speed limit out there? As I said initially, everyone said, not on your Nelly are you doing it. But it is safe, and one of the main ways of doing that, I've got, is a GDO4, which is a design risk assessment. It's a really thorough document, and it goes into every potential risk and what are the hazards, what are the opportunities with making this change. So we had to do that. That in itself is a hell of an ordeal. Any of you who've done a GDO4, they normally take 3 months to do it themselves. But that was a decision we had to make. Time, I've whittled on about time already. In a great, amazing short time we had to deliver that project. Traffic order comes back to time. 12 weeks it takes to put a traffic order in, and you've got to have the buy-in from people to do that traffic order. It's not as simple as us just saying what we want. It's got to be approved by a number of people. And who was involved? Joe mentioned, he'll come with that, approvals again. So who's involved, the approvals, who needs to sign it off? I'll be perfectly honest, I wasn't going to be the one to sign it off. I wasn't going to stand there and do it. But I was the one who had to manage getting it signed off. So there's various groups there, the team itself, the team who deliver it. It's a safety team which manages the whole network, and we have a project board which is the great and the good from Costain, WSP, Highways England. We need to get their buy-in. So how did we do it? Collaboration was the key. Sounds a bit naff, sounds a bit twee, it couldn't have been achieved if we didn't collaborate, if we didn't work together. And a lot of these tie in perfectly with Joe's slides about stakeholders. That was very much stakeholders as they're wider as the public. This is more the stakeholders of the team, but exactly the same things. The project team themselves was Highways England, me as Costain, and WSP, our designer. I'm glad they're not here because we're actually going to be nice about them. WSP were brilliant. They did a superb job working through us in getting this done. Highways England, external to the project team. So Ray, which is no longer here, Darren was involved all the way through this. Operations team, so it's the regional teams. We're as major projects, the regional teams, they needed to buy into it. The control centre, they manage the traffic officers, they needed to buy into it. The traffic orders team, when I went to them and said I want a traffic order in 6 weeks, and it's something you've never done before, again, I was getting used to the language by then. Highways England supply chain, so they've got TRL. They had to come up with what actually are we doing in this trial. It's fine to say we're going to do 60, what are we going to monitor it, what do we have to do? And again, that had to be agreed before we started the trial. The project team, it's fine and well me saying we're going to do it. I've got to get our subcontractors to do it. I put a couple up there, Martin, to do the traffic management. We all know traffic management is the most dangerous industry out there, probably along with recovery. BDV are our recovery people. They've all known people, and without being melodramatic, they've all known people who've been killed on their networks, and it's worked for them because of the traffic, the speed of the traffic. So us going to them and saying we're going to up it, we had to get their buy-in. And it's one of these things, well, I'll come on to that, sorry. South Yorkshire Police, major influencer. They had to buy into what we were doing. They were always concerned. They've worked with us. When we started this job back probably 5 years ago now, talking South Yorkshire Police, they hated all lane running. Absolutely, with a passion. The chief inspectors were on telly saying what a load of rubbish it was, how we were going to kill loads of people. And we had to work with them all the way through. And we come back to what Joe says, they are real advocates, not only of smart motorways, but of the project. So these are things which Joe said, ensure they are involved from the first minute. We basically said, right, hang on, get everyone in. The certain people we knew who were going to be awkward. So don't just keep them out the way and try and think, oh, they won't worry. Get them involved straight away, let them get all of their thoughts out. We can answer it, we can do something with it. Identify the issues early and to get their buy-in. And I did it with my project team that first meeting. I walked out of there an hour and a half. I was bloody drained, but I walked out of there with everyone saying, go on, we can do this. And I'm laughing, thinking, yeah, great, but it worked. Monthly workshops, we started off with the monthly workshops. The first meeting was at one in December. Amazing turnout. We managed to get probably 95% people. We had 20-25 at every workshop, and everybody came and they bought into it. I'm not sure if that was the challenge. I'm not sure if it was just Lorraine's biscuits. Lorraine brings a brilliant range of biscuits. Everyone a meeting, amazing. And then we followed up with that, because you can have the monthly workshop. Everyone agrees to go and do loads of actions. You come back a month later, nothing's been done. We couldn't afford to do that. Couldn't afford from day one. So we had weekly telephone meetings again. And everyone dialed in. Everyone dialed in, and it was actually quite a surprise. I thought I'd be out there hassling people to dial in. And we never really did it down there. It was actually everybody from day one fully bought into it. So, lead from the front. Again, me being advocate for it. And at the first off, I'll be honest, I was laughing as well, thinking we're never going to do this. But you realise it's actually the right thing to do. Show that to your team. And every time we had the meeting, a few more people saying, that's not a bad idea, this. Yeah, let's go for that. And it worked. And by doing that collaboration, is it safe? The GDO4 process went through it absolutely in detail. And we had to delay the scheme a little bit because the GDO4 wouldn't let us start where we wanted to, because we hadn't completed the works we said we were going to do. So it did what it needed to do. And WSP did a massive work in getting us that far. The time we did it, basically. So yes, and we couldn't have done it from every single one of those issues if it hadn't been the collaboration. Traffic order, we've talked about, who was involved, and the approvals. What was really good was I went to the project board, and we kept them involved, straight away approved. Absolutely, there was no issues, everyone was bought into it, we'd shown it throughout what we'd done, so it was all very positive. So that's how we do it. I'll try and quickly go through what we did. So we started off 50 miles an hour, and these are basically junctions from just 32 up to 35A, everywhere's at 50. We actually did have, based on the first 2 weeks, some monitoring of that 50 miles an hour, so monitored the speed of the traffic, monitored various things. Weeks 1 and 2, you'll see the furthest north on the right hand side there, we turned into 60 miles an hour. And then the following weeks, we extended that back to half the northbound carriageway up to 60 miles an hour. And the questions you're really asking, what is the impact of increasing the speed limit on vehicle speed, headway, which is basically the distance between the vehicles, number of incidents, journey times, customer satisfaction. This chart shows the increased speed as we went along. So you'll see how the orange line is where we increase the speed first. So straight away you'll see a spike, and that increased from average about 49 up to 52, and then continued to rise as people became more aware of that increase in speed limit. The grey line is obviously where we moved it a section later, 2 weeks later, so it stayed solid, and then that started to increase, and actually increased a little bit higher in that area. But the speeds did increase. Headway actually stayed the same. That didn't seem to have much impact on the trial at all on headway. Incidents, very little change in incidents. There was no further incidences, and there was definitely none as a result of the speed. So every time there was an incident, it was recorded. We'd try and find out from the traffic officer's service, the recovery, who recovered it, and generally they were all low speed. They were all done when the traffic was bad, not when the traffic was moving at 60 miles an hour. Boom, same again there. TM maintenance. So we're talking about, at that point in time, there's cones on the road. Were the cones getting smashed all over the place because people were going faster? No, they weren't. That was pretty standard. Journey time, it saved 34 seconds by increasing 10 miles an hour. So positive. And then Darren's team again did a lot of work with TRL, did a lot of customer feedback, and basically said, did it make you feel any different? So the charts basically show that people did feel a little bit better, a little bit more satisfied as they drove through a 60 rather than 50. It's a common, I believe everyone will probably be the same, they'd rather drive at 70 than 60, but 60 is better than 50. Did they feel safer? A slight change. They didn't necessarily feel unsafe, but they felt safer. We were lucky on our scheme. Our scheme, when we started in the 50, we didn't have the narrow lanes that you have on a lot of schemes. On a lot of other schemes, you've got the On other schemes, you've got the vehicles next to each other, HGVs, and you're driving along and you're going like that, and you're shaking. And we didn't have that. We managed to keep our lane widths pretty wide at the best of times. So I would say on another scheme, where they had narrow lane widths, they would feel a lot safer than they would when it's at 60. Positively, the journey time is improved. That's obvious. Everyone's going to be happier if the journey time takes less. And in summary, there's no indication there was a negative feedback on safety. Safety accidents the same. The guys on the road, so we actually discussed, TRL came back and had meetings with all the guys who'd been out there, the recovery drivers, the guys who had been working behind it. Nobody had felt that it was any particular unsafe. Now I would say this is at the end of the job. This is not behind VariGuard. This is not when we're busy working. This is very much in the commissioning period. And they, unsurprisingly, it says they are more satisfied with driving through at 60. Lessons learned from my perspective, really, from the project: allow time for planning. So we did achieve it. I wouldn't like to do it again in that period of time. I think everybody was relaxed after, eventually, when we got this scheme underway. Sort out the traffic order. Traffic order, again, everyone's pressured to get that approved. People maybe felt a bit pressured to get things done. Increased monitoring customers. I think it's all time related, though. I think if we had more time, I think the monitoring would have been slightly more people, slightly different places. The GDO4 was absolutely the fundamental bedrock of everything we did. The safety is the key, and again, it sounds twee, but safety is key. If it's not safe to do, we wouldn't have done it, and that delayed the project by a week because of that. So that document, and it is a nightmare. Other than GDO4, it is a bloody nightmare, but it is the one where you're going to be confident it's the right thing. And then standard procedures. Basically, we've done a lot of work with it, follow the same procedure for other schemes. And we did work with the M5 and went through all of the lessons learned we had with them, and they followed on with that further trial. So I think that's it for me. I'll pass you back to Lorraine. What's the...
No, I was trying to step on your feet as well. Right. Just so quickly picking up on the point that Mal made about time. The other thing to sort of note about this trial is that we wanted to put, and we did put, the 60 mile an hour trial on traffic management that had been designed for 50 miles an hour. And so everything that we did afterwards, the change to the TTRO and all those elements were added on to people's already busy workloads. And one of the other lessons that we have taken from this and we're taking forward is, well, what could you do if you designed for a higher speed in the first place, or you designed for, okay, it might have to run at 50 for now, but when could it go to a different speed? And that was sort of quite fundamental. So the M1 scheme that you just heard about was one of the trials that has fed into that. But we also ran successful trials on the A1 Leaming to Barton, the M5 4A to 6, and the M3 junction 2 to 4A. And on the M3 junction 2 to 4A, we tried something different as well. We ran a speed trial at 55 miles an hour. Again, to sort of see what benefits produced in terms of customer satisfaction, safety, customers, car drivers' perception of, being able to sort of travel at a different speed from heavy goods in the sort of same area. And all of the trials had successful results. So, on that sort of positive last note, do we have any questions?
I've got one for Mal. Picking up Joe's terminology, I'd like to know who your chief cheerleaders were.
Well, I think it had to come from me initially, from the project, so it had to be from me, but we managed to get every single contractor had to have the cheerleaders. They went on WSP, we needed their buy-in amazingly. I was England, Darren was there, and it's what was good was we always thought that sometimes you get these challenges and people disappear, drop a bomb on you, then disappear out the way. Everybody stayed totally throughout the project, so that was a benefit.
Yes.
Really interesting presentation. Just conscious drivers or motorists are quite conditioned to 50-mile-an-hour speed limits in motorway in roadworks. Did the monitoring extend to assessing the credence of the 50 prior to that? Did compliance to that vary with this trial?
No, if you looked at the monitoring slide, I think it stayed fairly similar. You would see that the first week we had it on, it hardly changed. So we went to 60 and people didn't realise it actually gone up. And then only when we extended it the next week it actually got a little bit further. And then the next week again, when we had the second length go on, it got bigger and bigger. So, but actually they did move up just in that area. Further down, where we stayed at 50, it stayed at that 50 pretty much all the way through.